Yes, so in today's world, we are seeing a lot of comparisons between the modern day United States and 1930s Germany. However, I don't think people are also considering the Gilded Age, and we are living in a period that becomes increasingly similar to the Gilded Age regarding our journalism, regarding our work experiences, or what it's like to be in the workforce in the United States, and several other factors as well. Yellow journalism is essentially what you have when you have media that is largely profit driven with very few regulations or ethical codes. And you'll see this in that if something is profit driven, it's not motivated by what is true, innovative, or real. It's motivated by whatever sells the most. So, whatever sells the most newspapers is often what is the most sensationalist thing that grabs the most attention. There's a common phrase in storytelling that I think most people need to remember is that dog bites man is not a story, man bites dog is a story. So, again, these newspapers aren't going to publish what is true and real because that isn't very interesting. So, you'll see them posting things like dramatic correspondences. One example of this being the Bone Wars. There's these two paleontologists named Marsh and Cope, and they become these bitter rivals over dinosaurs to the point of where they're using dynamite to blow up fossils so that the other person can't get a hold of them. And they have these bitter exchanges throughout newspapers, and people just keep publishing them because it sells the most. Not because it's real, but because it's drama and everybody wants a piece of it and it makes money. Another more serious example is that in 1899, an article was published claiming that China was going to tear down the Great Wall of China, claiming that it was useless in the modern age. And there was no truth to this whatsoever. But this outrage by Chinese nationals in response to this did not help the tensions that were rising with the Boxer Rebellion that would take place the next year. Another example is the assassination of President William McKinley. It is often believed that yellow journalism had a hand in that, as well as the Spanish-American War. If you take a look at yellow journalism, it might remind you of a few things of today, like drama on TikTok or YouTube. It might remind you of how social media algorithms work, or like tabloids, where it's not about being true or real, it's by what drives the most sales. And over time, yellow journalism gradually faded as people began to take journalism more seriously. Some journalists started to adopt codes of ethics, and there was some regulation by the government in order to prevent this from happening on radio and television as well. What's happening today is that we are seeing people becoming isolated and radicalized and turning to violence because they don't see any proper way of recourse, or they're dealing with mental health struggles that are not properly diagnosed. It is more difficult for me now to establish a base of understanding with someone with different political beliefs because the information that we receive is catered to us. It is not necessarily reflective of reality. What I see is catered to me, what they see is catered to them, whether we intend to do that or not. And what you'll see is that the reason why people often turn to violence and radicalism is very similar to what you see in psychological patients, where you have children who will do things such as screaming or destroying things or even smearing feces on the walls. Psychologically, they are doing that because they are trying to find a way to be seen or to take control. And when people become radicalized, they don't know how to take control or to be seen. And so they're often doing that as a means to find that sense of validation, purpose, or identity. This also happened during the Gilded Age. People became radicalized and disenfranchised because they felt like they had no means of recourse. They felt like there was no way for them to correct or even address the problems in their society, so they turned to anarchism. They started attacking political figures or bombing specific locations like Wall Street, killing dozens of people in the process. This was for multiple reasons. Some of them had unaddressed mental illness, some of them were trying to assert control, and some of them were trying to spark revolutions in the hopes of creating a better government for the future. That's what's happening in the United States right now, where people are becoming more radicalized and they're turning to violence because of the media that they consume that convinces them that it is the only means of recourse. And that is something that needs to be addressed while also considering the outside influences that are actively trying to divide Americans against each other. In my home state in Texas, for instance, for over 15 years now, multiple stories have come forward that people have erroneously believed that are eventually tied back to Russia. The idea that the federal government, for instance, is trying to take over the state of Texas, or false ideas like the state of Texas should secede from the Union. Those are traced back to Russian sources who are actively trying to turn Americans against each other. So there is a reason why we regulate media, and yellow journalism is a prime example of that, because if you don't regulate media, bad things happen.